It was a Sunday afternoon when Mark left the jail complex. He spent past 11 years in jail. The law had changed in the country, which enabled him to be released. He had to spend 15 years in total. When he was out of jail, he went to the social workers because he needed to have a job and he needed to be able to sustain himself. He got a job eventually. When he was out of jail, a friend contacted him, someone he knew from high school. Let's call this friend Bob. And Bob told Mark over the phone, Mark, I'm glad you're out of jail, man. Mark said, yeah, of course I'm glad I'm out of jail. And Bob said, Mark, I know you didn't do it. Mark became emotional, yet as a man he behaved himself and he said, Bob, please don't talk about it. But Bob said, Mark, there's something I need to show you. I'll send you the file through WhatsApp. Then Mark said, okay. Mark received the file. He plugged his mobile phone to his computer. He was able to purchase a cheap desktop with some of the welfare he received during his jail time. And he opened the file, the zip file. And he found many news articles, including news articles of his arrest. And when he went through the news articles, there were 25 in total. He realized that something didn't add up with the news articles. He realized that the whole story around his arrest was a fabrication. For example, in one article it said that he was arrested at 11 p.m. on Christmas Day, while in fact he was arrested on December 22nd in the afternoon. Then another article said he was arrested on the 24th of December, 8 o'clock in the morning. And there was a lot of violence involved with it, which he realized that wasn't true either. So when he saw all those news articles, he realized that the media was lying about this arrest. None of them gave an accurate description of what really happened. That opened his eyes and he realized, no, this case is very, very weird. Then Mark called Bob and he said, Bob, are you the one that campaigned legally for me to be released? And Bob said, yes, I hired 3 attorneys on your behalf. Each one of them had much difficulty getting the case through, but eventually, when the inconsistencies became so obvious to the public, it became an embarrassment for the legal system to leave you behind bars. So to protect the respect of the legal system, they had to release you. Because it was a big embarrassment. Your whole case was an embarrassment, man. So Mark realized, indeed, it's very weird. Indeed. Now what happened? 12 years earlier, Mark worked at an office. And there was this young lady over there that worked there also. She's a type of lady that, well, she craved a lot of attention of males. She craved a lot of male attention. She even dressed provokingly, talked provokingly, and all of that. And Mark had no interest. He realized this chick is going to bring me a lot of trouble, and Mark had no intention of getting headaches. He had graduated college 5 years earlier. He switched jobs 3 times due to toxic environments, and he was now at a job where things were relatively at ease, and he wanted to keep it that way. So that chick realized, I'm not going to bother with Mark because Mark will not give me any attention. Shortly after that, that chick went missing. And her body was found 15 days later. So Suddenly, the police arrived at Mark's door, interrogating him. They then interrogated all the people at the office. But here's a catch. That chick lied that she was involved with Mark. Mark was her boyfriend. And people believed it. So when she went missing, who do you think the police saw as the first suspect? Mark. Mark had no idea she lied to others that she was involved with Mark. She even used Photoshop to edit some pictures to pretend as if they were a couple. But Mark didn't bother much with it because Mark didn't really knew her. He was upset that she was killed and all of that, but he realized he had to move on with his life. And so about a month later, he was arrested for murder. He had to stand trial. In the trial, there was little to no evidence that he was even at the crime scene. But though to the convincing attitude of the jury, he was convicted. He was really convicted to life in prison, but they changed it into 15 years. And that was a red flag for many people in the courthouse because they thought if this guy's really guilty, he should receive at least 30 years for the crime he committed. But he received only 15 years. So a lot of folks, legal professionals that were in the courthouse when the verdict was given, thought this is weird. There were even some journalists there that realized this is quite weird. So Mark went to jail. After 2 years in jail, Mark realized he will have to spend the rest of his 13 years behind bars. So he realized, you know what? Let me read books, let me follow courses, let me make the best of my time in here. Because Mark realized that these people are not going to let him go. But Mark had Bob that saw through the deception, and Bob kept fighting on Mark's behalf. Now that's a real friend right over there. When everyone else believes or wants to believe that you're guilty and that you're finished, this friend looked at the facts and saw through the deception. And even though he realized the population was in denial, he saw through the facts and he worked on Mark's behalf. And Mark was not even aware of it because Mark had already given up. But this friend didn't. Now that's a real friend over there. Bob realized that he couldn't convince Mark to keep fighting because Mark already went through a lot. But Bob, despite having his own life, he made some time daily to both pray and to operate on Mark's behalf. So that's how it happened that in the 10th year of Mark's sentence, Bob realized, hold on a minute, if this girl went missing, why is it that there was no search to her? She was a popular girl. She was a popular young woman. A lot of people knew her. She had many boyfriends during her late teens and early 20s. She was 26. She was a party girl. She often went to pubs and clubs here and there. So there should have been many people knowing about her whereabouts. So it would have been very easy for the police and for the investigators to locate her, or to locate who she had contact with. They found her cell phone, the media said. So if they found her cell phone, they could easily track all her conversations. So Bob realized that the whole story didn't add up. But then Bob wanted to know why the story was fabricated. And here's why. In that community, well, let's call it city, there was a scandal going on. There were politicians and businessmen that stole 50 million euros of tax revenue. And those 50 million were spent in investments in China and in Dubai. But because this 50 million was missing, a lot of people lost, they lost their pension funds. because the tax that they paid would later be used also for the pension funds. The pension funds were one of the spendings of the taxation services in the country. Well, it's a complicated arrangement, but that's how it was. So a lot of people that had to receive their pension suddenly couldn't receive anything. So those elderly people, some of them became homeless. Some of the family had to take them up. And not only that, there were some projects in that city that couldn't continue because there was no money to pay the employees. There were a lot of things falling apart in that town, in that city, I mean. And people realized something's wrong here. And people became upset, became angry, and they demanded answers. Some people even became violent, but they did not become violent against the leaders of the community, but they became violent towards people near them. They took out their frustrations on those around them. So you had domestic violence in which one spouse battered the other spouse or battered the children. You had one of the children battering a sibling, or in school things went wrong. So violence escalated in the community because the tension and the pain was high. So the pagan rulers of that country realized, hold on a minute, if things continue like this in this city, it'll escalate in atrocities. And not only that, it will spread around to other cities also, because the pagan rulers understood very well that violence is contagious. But the pagan rulers also knew that there was no way that the public would understand that 50 million euros would just disappear out of the treasury of the municipality, or better, of the province, because you had only a few municipalities in the province. They understood very well that 50 million euros cannot just disappear out of the treasury of the province and nobody knows about it. So there was no way to explain this to the population. So they wanted to cover this up, because they knew once this comes out, there's going to be more outrage. And it would be very difficult to control the people and keep them at ease. So one of the pagan rulers, a wizard, came up with a plan. They would sacrifice the life of a young lady that's popular. This would cause a shock and trauma in the community. And this shock and trauma would distract the people of all the tensions that were going on. So then the attention of people are drawn away from what's really happening to this incident, this young lady being murdered. And shortly afterwards, they would point out a guy as a perpetrator. And the guy would be convicted quickly. And the wizard said, we'll make sure that all the media talks about it all the time. When all the media, both on television and radio, keep talking about it, and also on social media, people keep sending chain messages about it, people are conditioned into believing the story is real, and they don't have time to focus on anything else anymore. And it worked. And Mark's boss had debts at the bank, and the bank was run by one of those pagan rulers. So that pagan ruler used Mark's boss as a pawn in the plot. And Mark's boss, because he didn't want to become homeless, so he lose his company and all of that, he complied. And that's how that young lady was killed, and Mark was blamed, and he had to spend 11 years behind bars. But here's the thing, the deception worked. People really believed Mark was the killer, and the rage of the community turned against Mark. They even wanted him to receive the death penalty or to be hanged. So all the heavy, angry tensions of the community concerning the scandal was now directed at Mark. And people completely forgot about the job losses, elderly people becoming homeless. That was all forgotten, because all people exhausted and depleted of their human energy, because all that energy was drawn to Mark in a negative manner, and that drained the people. So people were after the conviction, after the verdict was given, concerning Mark, people were so tired of the case, they just wanted to move on. And when they moved on, they didn't even notice anymore that there were still elderly people, homeless, people that the unemployment had increased because their perception was blinded by Mark's conviction. Now, in this case, it's obvious that Mark had been set up. And Mark later, with the help of Bob, figured out what had happened. But Mark knew very well that he would never get back those 11 years, and that people likely will not admit they've been wrong, especially people that build up their self-esteem at his expense by believing all the lies about him. Those people that build up their self-esteem at his expense, they develop relationships with other people over the years based on that myth. So if the truth comes out, those relationships that they've built at Mark's expense, whether it's marriage relationships or friendships or business relationships, will all collapse. He knew very well that when the truth comes out, people are going to resist it and fight against it. And Mark had no intention of getting angry people after him. His life had been disrupted enough already. So Mark decided to take up a new identity, a new passport with a false name, and begin a new life somewhere else. Bob knew about it, and Bob kept his new identity hidden from others. Now, that was the parable, and the parable took quite long. Why did I give you such a long parable? Because I want you to realize that denial is a political act. Maybe you don't think about denial in such terms, but denial is a political act. Why? There's an outcome someone wants to hold on to, and they want to preserve this outcome against all other outcomes that may threaten that outcome that he holds dear. And whenever data appears that will trouble the outcome they're holding on to, they will fight that data to protect the outcome they hold dear. And they'll use all the resources to protect the outcome they hold dear. Let me go back to the parable I just gave on to you. Mark was convicted, he was in jail. One of his former classmates, who hadn't reached anything in life, began to complain about Mark and how kind of a bad ass he was during high school. And by doing this, he got attention from a lot of people who truly believed the lies about Mark. And one of those individuals that believed his lies was a shop owner, and he became friends with the shop owner because of their contempt for Mark. They both contempted Mark, the shop owner, because of what he heard on the media, and that former classmate, let's call him Rick. Rick had contempt for Mark because of jealousy, or out of envy, because Mark often had access to what they consider the hot chicks, and this Rick was so shy that he never dared to approach women. So that was the cause for Rick's envy. And now Rick had a chance to exercise his envy, to exercise his rage against Mark. And he did that, and this brought him together with the shop owner. And the shop owner had a cousin who was very good looking. And the shop owner introduced that good looking cousin to Rick. And that's how Rick got involved with her. And over the years, well, they married. He had 2 kids also. So this Rick got outcomes he longed for at Mark's expense. Now, what would happen if the truth comes out that all the stories that Rick told about Mark were a hoax? Were hoaxes, I mean. What if the truth comes out that Rick lied about everything? Then his wife is going to evaluate their relationship, their marriage, because their marriage is based on who she thought Rick really was and who Rick really is. So when she realized that their friendship later developed into a relationship, into a romantic relationship was based on a hoax, then she's going to question everything else about Rick. And here's the thing, they're already married. They already have 2 kids. So when she realizes that she is married to a narc or to a pathological liar, well, she will have to face things. She will have to face that she's with a pathological liar. But if she acknowledges this, that means she will need to divorce him. She needs to explain this to the kids why the parents are divorcing. The relatives, both families in law, are going to ask questions. It's going to be a difficult phase for the wife. So let's say the wife figures out that what her husband was saying was a lie, that this Mark was innocent. Once she realizes this, she will also realize how this information is going to affect her marriage. And here's the thing, she developed a reputation as the happy wife in the community. So then that also has to disappear. And many of the friends she had were only based on her identity as his happy wife, as this woman that matured. Just for her to become a divorced woman, meaning she would have to date again to find someone else. Well, those are the outcomes she doesn't want. So she has this outcome that she wants to hold on to. That's her being married to Rick and having this, how would I say, systematic relief. I call it systematic relief or their family life. So, to hold on to that outcome, she denies the truth that Mark is innocent. She denies that the media has lied. She denies that people have chosen to believe a lie at someone else's expense. She will also deny that her husband is part of the plot and that he is a pathological liar. She will deny and to repress any of this knowledge. Why? Because she has a political motive. She wants to preserve the outcome of her being a married woman and having this life of ease as a married woman. You get what I'm saying here? So she will become obsessed with combating and fighting the truth about Mark. Let's say now that this woman realizes that the truth is going to come out anyway, so she thinks, I need to take action. And when she finds out that there's this Bob, who is a legal professional, who fought on Mark's behalf, she may think of ways to get rid of this Bob, just to preserve her marriage and preserve her life of ease. And then if she, if she proceeds in her political motive, she may end up either tricking this Bob or hiring a hitman to get rid of him or find some way to ruin his reputation, whatever. So she becomes a perpetrator now, a victimizer now, to keep the outcome that she wants. You see now how denial operates. Denial is a political motivated act. And because it's politically motivated, it will progress into violence if the individual does not repent of that denial as soon as possible. Don't you realize that many homicides are the result of someone operating in denial? Look, in the parable I just gave on to you, that long parable, I illustrated how this young man lost years of his life, years that he could have been productive for the community, just because the rulers of that country did not want something to get out. But it wasn't just the pagan rulers that did this onto Mark. The masses that believed everything the media told. If the people in the masses would just look at the stories that the media outlets were giving, they would realize nothing adds up. And the pagan rulers made sure that none of the media messages added up, just so that those who are alert would realize this is a ritual. But again, the pagan rulers of the world know very well that the masses don't want to be real. So they rather believed this lie about Mark and ruin his life than to face reality. And the pagan rulers of the world exploited this easy compliance of the population. So it wasn't just the pagan rulers, it were the people, I would say it were the masses that enabled the pagan rulers. So it were the people eventually that made it possible for Mark to spend 11 years in jail for something he couldn't have committed. You get what I'm saying here? And you have many of such cases in the world. You have many Marks out there. Maybe not on such a big level, with such an related to such intense case. Maybe there's a cheating spouse somewhere, and now the other spouse begins to scapegoat one of the children, and that child gets addicted to drugs or pornography or whatever, though all the stress and all of it, and everyone can see that child though as the problem to the family, while indeed that child or teenager is the victim because of the dysfunctional relationship of the parents. Such things happen. Just understand denial is a political act. It's politically, and it's motivated by politics. Because denial is politics. Understand that. Look, the reason I'm revealing this onto you is because I want you to look at the bigger picture. Often, people only look at the surface of stuff, and they get along with what's presented to them on the surface. But listen to me carefully. When the data people present onto you on the surface doesn't match, when the context does not, let me say, when the context is not in harmony with the content, realize that there's a cover-up going on. And once you realize that there's a cover-up going on, evaluate the situation, and if possible, remove yourself from the situation. In this case, and I'm saying the parable I gave in this video, Mark had nothing to do with the disappearance and murder of that young woman. It was a ritual. Nevertheless, he became involved because, well, they needed a scapegoat. And because this chick had already lied that she was involved with Mark, the pagans involved in the, the pagans were involved in the scam. They could easily use it to make Mark the perpetrator, at least in the media. But there's another thing here. Mark did not bring this on himself. This was not his fault. This was done unto him. Nevertheless, there were red flags that Mark could have realized something bad was about to happen. When that chick disappeared, he realized that some folks began to ask him questions. Now, he had no idea that the chick lied that he was her boyfriend. But some of those people who realized that something bad was going on told him, Mark, are you sure you want to keep this job? Maybe it's better for you to look for something else. There are more vacancies for you that are better for you. Or some of them even suggest unto him, Mark, you've been single for 3 years now. Why don't you look for some chick very soon? People can suggest options to him. Why did those people suggest options onto him? Because the people that suggested those options onto him, some of them were colleagues, some of them were strangers. Those were the people that were alert and noticed that something's wrong with the disappearance of this woman. And those people sensed that, oh, if Mark used to be her boyfriend, but now the news is out, or it's obvious now that she lied that he was her boyfriend, so actually she used him as a cover-up. If that's the case, then Mark may be in trouble soon concerning the disappearance of this woman, because people are going to come after him, ask him questions, because they think he is her man. So those people, they didn't want to say to Mark, something's going on here. They didn't want to scare Mark. They didn't want to make Mark uncomfortable, but they tried to covertly hint to him that something is up. Now, if Mark would have been a bit more alert, he would have picked up the attitude of those people and would have realized, hold on a minute, why are those people suggesting these things on me? What's going on? If he would have looked beyond and asked more questions, he would have been able to figure out something is wrong. And he would have been able to see it coming, that he may get in trouble concerning this woman after all. And he may have been more prepared to plan his escape from that city. So they wouldn't be able to trick him and put him behind bars. Now, am I saying that it was Mark's fault that he ended up 11 years in jail for something he didn't do? No, he didn't do it unto himself. Nevertheless, he might have escaped it if he would have been more alert. That's why I'm telling you to look at the bigger picture. Not just for yourself, but also for those in your care and for those around you. Always look at the bigger picture. That's it for now. Agree with Christ and be at peace.